In this video, I'm going to give you an overview of 7 different database technologies that you might come across as a software developer for the web. Some of these are relational databases, some of them are NoSQL, and several of these databases you can use as a managed database as a service solution. And if you don't know what any of these categories mean yet, then this is the perfect video for you. Okay, I'm going to start with a disclaimer. I've not actually had first-hand experience with every single database on this list, so some of what I'm about to talk about is from research I did online for this video. I will be sharing my first-hand experience where I have it though, so without much further ado, let's look at our first category, and that's SQL or SQL databases. SQL is a database query language. It stands for Structured Query Language, and it looks a bit like this on the screen. So databases that can read this kind of query and interpret it on the data is called an SQL database. And the first one we're going to look at is MySQL. MySQL is an extremely popular open source database that you can run basically on any computer with an operating system. It's very popular to install on dedicated Linux servers and then you connect to that from your application. But you can also download and install MySQL onto your device and connect to it locally from your code. There are also a few services that you can pay a subscription to, and they will manage your MySQL servers for you, and you just pay for how much you use. This is the managed database as a service solution that I referred to at the start of this video. All 3 of the big cloud providers offer MySQL as a managed service. So you've got Amazon RDS, you've got Google Cloud SQL and Azure MySQL databases. And because MySQL is so popular, you can pretty much rely on all of these services to act the same way, which is nice for consistency. MySQL uses SQL queries as the query language that you use to query the data, and you perform operations like updates and creates and deletes. There are some drawbacks to MySQL, of course. It's a very old database technology, and I mean really old, like it was invented in 1995, and that means that they haven't been able to really innovate very much on it and adapt to the global fast connection speed world that we live in now, which is really a polite way of saying that it's not particularly fast and it doesn't really scale particularly well. But MySQL is fine for a lot of use cases, and if you just want a database that's free, that's easy to use, and with an enormous wealth of information online to help you, then MySQL is still a good choice of database. Okay, second, we have another database that's a bit like MySQL, but it's a bit fancier, and that's Postgres. Postgres is written like this, PostgreSQL, but most people will pronounce this word Postgres. And it's a database technology that's been around for a very, very long time. But unlike MySQL, which has remained largely unchanged, Postgres has gained a reputation for being really innovative, and it has some very cool advanced features. For example, Postgres is extremely good at operating at scale. It offers something called distributed SQL, which means you can scale it horizontally very easily. Horizontal scaling is where you increase the capacity of your database servers by creating more small servers, as opposed to vertical scaling, which is where you just increase the size of the one server. Size meaning memory and CPU resources. So Postgres is very good at this horizontal strategy for scaling. Like MySQL, Postgres can be managed by Azure, by AWS or by GCP, and like MySQL, you can also run it locally on your machine. Okay, the third database we're going to look at is another SQL relational database, and that's Oracle. Now, Oracle uses SQL just like the last 2 we looked at. The main difference with Oracle is that it's a commercially supported database technology. So that means you pay for it, and in return you get a degree of customer support from Oracle themselves to help you out. So because of this, Oracle is a database that we as software developers don't tend to choose. It's usually a choice that's made for us by the company that we work for. A lot of banks and financial institutions, for example, will use Oracle because it's tried and tested and they can afford the cost of it. Oracle does have some quite advanced features. They offer blockchain tables, for example, which might be a selling point, but then again it might not. It's up to you. So with Oracle being the big enterprise database service, there is also another competitor to it, and that's almost as widely used, and that's Microsoft SQL Server or SQL Server. SQL Server follows a similar commercial model to Oracle. Although they do both have free community versions available, it's probably fair to say that the SQL Server, the free version of that, is more widely adopted. And this isn't just Microsoft Oracle, because there is actually one feature that SQL Server absolutely nails, and that's database scripting. SQL Server has this scripting language called Transact SQL, and that allows you to write really quite complex procedures that run directly on your database. You can add variables and perform loops and do most of the things you'd expect from a basic scripting language, and all of this runs directly on the database tables, so it's extremely fast and performant. Here's an example of a TSQL or a Transact SQL script that you can run on a database on SQL Server. You can see that it's setting variables and it's calling select queries inline and things. Now, I said that this is an advantage of SQL Server, and in my opinion, this is a bit of an anti-pattern. I've worked on systems that have all of their business logic hidden away in database scripts like this before, and I'll be perfectly honest, it is a bit of a nightmare. It's very difficult to version control this, and it's very difficult to test TSQL scripts. So a lot of dev teams that use them don't really bother with either of those two things. And in my opinion, at least, what you gain in raw performance by doing this, you lose in development velocity. It's kind of like a balance between spending money on a faster database server or spending money on development time to navigate these kinds of scripts. So lastly, as far as managed SQL Server goes, it's probably not a huge surprise that Microsoft offer it on their Azure cloud services, but GCP and AWS don't. Okay, that brings us to the next category of databases, and that's NoSQL. As the name implies, a NoSQL database is a database that stores data but it doesn't use SQL. In practice, what this means is that they tend to store unstructured data. So that's data where the shape of the field names isn't fixed for each record. So you can store one object with one set of properties, and then you can store another object with a completely different set of properties in the same place, in the same table, essentially. You might see NoSQL databases referred to as document stores, because this unstructured data is sometimes called document. So, first on the list of NoSQL databases, by far the most popular, and that's MongoDB. MongoDB was the first NoSQL document database to be released back in 2009, and you can install it on any kind of operating system or in a Docker container, and it gives you the ability to store unstructured data and then query it using a MongoDB's own query language. As far as disadvantages go, then the biggest one I've found is that there aren't too many managed MongoDB services that you can use. Cloud providers like Azure, AWS and GCP have tended to design their own NoSQL document databases, and they offer those instead of offering a managed MongoDB service. So for example, AWS has DynamoDB, which has similar in function to MongoDB, and the queries for DynamoDB, they look a little bit similar to MongoDB queries, but it really isn't as mature and fully featured as MongoDB itself. So managed options, the only real drawback is this one. Provided you've already made the decision that you want a NoSQL database and you don't want to store structured data, then MongoDB is still a fairly decent shout in 2022. In the past, MongoDB had some very serious security vulnerabilities, and it is popular to dunk on it online. However, in 2022, most of these kinds of issues have been addressed, and it is fairly solid. Next up, we have another NoSQL database that's currently rising in popularity, and that's Apache Cassandra. Cassandra is an open source NoSQL database that is designed with one primary purpose, and that's performance at scale. Cassandra was designed for big data, and it has a lot of clever replication and sharding functionality that make it very good at scaling rapidly in response to changes in demand. Cassandra also has a query language called CQL that looks a bit like SQL. So even though it is a NoSQL data store, you can do a degree of structured querying on it. The biggest drawbacks of Cassandra are, like MongoDB, there aren't a huge number of managed options, and also it can get very expensive. All of that performance and all of that scaling, it comes at a price, and very often that's a very real price in cash. Okay, the last database on this list is another NoSQL database called RavenDB. I don't have a huge amount to say about RavenDB, but I have used it for many years. It's an open source NoSQL database written in C#. It does scale pretty well, which makes it a good option for storing large numbers of relatively unstructured documents. If you're using .NET and you're using C#, then Raven is a pretty decent shout, as it creates a very nice database abstraction layer for your code base. That's way simpler to use than Entity Framework. So you might consider that as an advantage. RavenDB do themselves offer a managed database instance, although there is obviously no native implementation of RavenDB on any of the big 3 cloud providers. So again, if simple pay-per query is what you're looking for, then it might be better to go with DynamoDB or Cosmos or Datastore. So there you have it, 7 of the most popular databases that you'll come across as a software developer on the web in 2022 and beyond. If you think I've missed anything, then please leave comments below and I will reply back to you. As always, please check out my other videos and subscribe to Train to Code right here on YouTube for more software development concepts, more patterns, general tips and advice. I hope to see you in the next video and good luck picking the right database for your project.